Hi, everybody. We've all been muted. I've been allowed to unmute myself, seeing as I can't really present without it. Really great to have you all here. Thank you so much. There was quite a few people in the waiting room, so we're just giving everyone a chance to enter the meeting. We have put you on mute in order to make sure that it's audible, because obviously I realise that it's lunchtime and there's children in the background and all sorts of things. We will always also record this webinar so that we've got things that we can refer back to. I'm just trying to find the chat, get the chat live myself at the moment because it's moving around on my screen. What would really help me is if you could just say hello in the chat, because that might make it easier for me to actually see it, because it's being a bit elusive at the moment. Great, it's flashing now, so hopefully it's going to let me see it. Thanks guys. Oh, brilliant, thank you. So many of you are names that I recognise. You've been on a webinar before, so it's great that you said hello. If you want to let us know where in the country you are or what sort of organisation you are part of, feel free to introduce yourself. In that respect, we have found that we've had some really nice networking that's come out of these and follow-up sessions from people actually just chatting to each other in the chat. So do feel free to introduce yourself. I've got Brenda from the Netherlands. Welcome, Brenda. Marie from Cobalt Housing. I've seen you a few times. So Scotland, snowy Scotland. So Cape Town. I'm so jealous, Roseanne. I was supposed to be flying to South Africa tomorrow and I'm not. Christine Brown from Chesterfield, my hometown. There you go. So people from all the place, lovely to see you. I will crack on. Helen, do you want to record if you haven't already, just to make sure that I keep going? Yeah. These webinars tend to take 30 to 40 minutes, so I'll keep it under 40 minutes, but because we try and make it interactive and we found that actually hope that gives people as much value as possible, then it does mean that it may take a little bit longer than that. So this subject, employee engagement, well, it's one that's been interesting me for a while, and I've been really curious about it because probably 20 years ago I first started working with engagement when I was in-house in a company called Siemens. We were running at the time the Gallup engagement survey, and it was quite new. Engagement was quite a new buzzword then, and it was quite interesting because lots of people were, well, we had run this Gallup survey which had 12 questions, and it was seen as being something which was really unique because it correlated engagement with performance metrics, with finance, etc. Or that's what they said they did. And I have to say, it didn't come cheap. We were their smallest purchaser in the UK of the Gallup survey, and I think we spent like 100 grand a year. So this is how much we spent on it. Now, obviously, engagement surveys are 10 a penny now. I suppose the question that I had is it really a thing? Has the research gone on? And that's what I want to share with you. I went and did a little bit of homework on this. I ran a Clubhouse, get me, session on this, which is actually really enlightening. And I've tried to summarize the findings that I've come across in this area of employee engagement in recent times and apply it to the circumstances that we're in, which of course is remote working and a virtual world. So that's what we're going to look at here. I've launched straight in. I'm assuming that many of you who've been here before know me. So this is me if you don't. Thank you for joining. All of my links are here, and what we always do is we will send out, so we've got your email address because you signed up on Eventbrite. So my colleague, Caitlin, will send out tomorrow the slides and also a link to the video for you as well afterwards, if there's anything you want to go back over. And if any of these links therefore are useful to you, you've got all of my contact details as well. So what I wanted to get out of this, I talked a moment ago about why I wanted to look at the subject. What we're going to look at over the next half hour or so is, well, what do we really mean when we're talking about employee engagement? Because it is a little bit of a misunderstood concept, or certainly very widely described in terms of what it might mean. The impact of virtual working on employee engagement. I'm going to ask you guys how you feel about engagement and your engagement in your teams. I'm going to touch on the research on talent and engagement, and yeah, we'll link it all to remote management strategies. So obviously I said I've done a little bit of homework, so I will obviously give you the official answers, but I'm interested, you guys out there, clearly you're interested in the topic, clearly you have an idea as what you think employee engagement must be. If you want to let us know in the chat, how would you define it? Or how is it interpreted if we talked about employee engagement in the organizational business that you work for? So what would you say employee engagement is? Let us know your definitions. Sunny North Wales, Laurie, lucky. And hi, Doton from Nigeria. So Colin's saying engagement is open dialogue with interaction. Right, so that's brilliant. So both Colin and Lindsay straight in with different interpretations of it, which is interesting. So Colin's talking about if we were to engage with somebody, sort of the verb of engaging, we would have open dialogue with interaction, which absolutely that would be a way of doing it as an activity or a process of engaging people. Lindsay's defining it as a happy workforce, which is also an output, isn't it? Which is interesting. So we're engaged. Julie's saying it's about fun. If we feel included, that would be how we are when we feel engaged. David's talking about how happy do colleagues feel to perform within the organisation, so link with performance. Mark's talking about associative commitment, so similarity, so our commitment to the organisation, feeling connected tomorrow is on the same length, also fit here from Vanessa. Inclusivity, again, linked to performance from Helen. So Kelly's saying we have a monthly meeting on Zoom. Does that mean that makes you engaged? Is that how you engage? So what's really interesting, and thanks for those comments, I can't go through every single one of them there, but actually there are multiple interpretations, aren't they? We on this group here, of which there'll be a range of HR, and in fact, let me know, I don't know if you're HR or management, but there's usually a range of HR, learning and development, OD professionals, and people managers in this. The reality is we define it slightly differently. So some of us talk about it as this output, which is almost the holy grail of us in an organization, as we need to have engaged employees that we can measure on an engagement survey. And then that's a really interesting question. If you have a measure of it, what's the value of that? Is it what we do with it? Others might say, well, it's about engaging with people. It's the process by which we manage people and get engaged with people. And the other thing is, it's almost internal in terms of our own levels of engagement in there. And you're all right. I mean, there's no surprise, I suppose, in this. In terms of the way we look at this, there are different definitions of engagement out there, and it can be a process and a verb and a state. One of them is they talk about our personal role engagement. So it's almost our intrinsic connection to our work, the extent to which, if you think about when you're in the flow with something, our emotional, cognitive and physical connection to our work. So we're fully engaged, we enjoy doing it, probably we find purpose in it and value with it. So we might have engagement with our personal role. The other context is work engagement, which these are all different. I'm not saying they're totally different. I got a lot of this information from the CIPD website, actually. Fortuitously, they had just done a research review on engagement this year. So I'll put the link later on this if any of you want to go and read the in-depth works there. They then talked also about work engagement, which is our vigor towards our work, a vigor meaning loads of energy, our dedication and absorption in the work activity. So I think the slight difference here, the personal one could be very much, you could be quite personally interested in a subject or a topic. It may or may not be beneficial for the work, if you like, the job or the business that you work within. So some people, like an example might be if they talk about programmers who program for the love of it, they may or may not be programming in the direction that you want people to do. They just like coding, for example. Whereas I'm thinking that work engagement is more purposeful in line with the business outcomes. That's the way I interpret it, where actually they are engaged in committed to the outputs which are linked to your business or your work outcomes. Ideally, obviously, if you can link the two together, you've probably really got it. And the third definition, which is quite a simplistic one, but I put it in because it was, again, the Gallup who were the sort of the originators of engagement, and I think we'd like to think they were the originals. They defined it as if you're engaged in terms of what they are getting people to measure, it would say that you are willing to go the extra mile for your company, for your business. So and the whole piece of that kind, so the point 2 and 3, the key here, I think we're saying, is that we are really committed to go the extra mile for the business in the direction of the aims that they want us to go in, or that will help and support the business. So it's alignment, I would say, an engaged alignment there. So if we took that definition, so we're not talking about how we do it, because we will talk about how we do it. So actually it's quite a nice definition that John Backer said there, employees having a commitment and stake in the company's business objectives. We're all aligned, wanted to go the extra mile. Let's say Toby's used the exact same terms. I'm going to, as ever, ask a couple of polls. So These are anonymous. I don't know what your answer is, so be honest. I'm going to ask you 2 polls. The first one is going to be, how do you feel in terms of being engaged currently? Not at all, slightly, moderately, and extremely. And the second one is asking you to think about how you feel relative to a year ago. So are you lower, the same, or higher? So let me launch the poll for you so you can see it. So the definition we're taking is being aligned, wanting to go the extra mile, your job in line with the business objectives, how you feel about that right now. Be interesting because we've got 150 people out there, so we can do a bit of a snap poll and see how are we all feeling in terms of our engagement. Okay, we've got up to 100 responses. That's fantastic, and I'll share them in a moment. They're firing up, so I'll let everybody have a think. Brilliant. Up to 80% of votes. So I'll give another 5-10 seconds. There's usually a few shy people, but no need to be shy. I can't see anything, but I've got 5 more seconds. Anyone else want to make their decision? Pop a vote in there, and then I will end the voting and share. Okay. Any predictions as to, would you say people are more engaged or less engaged? Any predictions out there? 85%. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now and launch. Yeah, interesting. You'd think that, wouldn't it? Well, maybe. So can you see the results I'm sharing? So predicting less, what I'm actually seeing is a real spread. And maybe there's something about you guys. You're investing in yourselves. You're in your development. You're attending a webinar. The sun is out. You're moderately engaged. There's a kind of fit, and then there's slightly and extremely. It's very, very even, isn't it? I don't know if you could conclude anything from this. We've got a spread, so as many people pretty much are less engaged as are more engaged. So I wonder what that means. And equally engaged, and a number of people are moderately engaged and equally engaged. So actually that would probably say you're as engaged as you ever were. I suppose one conclusion I'd say from this is, amongst this population of people, yeah, that's interesting. How you say, I'm quite surprised this result's interesting. Other people's comments, and maybe we'll explore this. So are you an exceptional group of people? Does it mean, as actually Mark saying, people have adapted, or employees have adapted? Is this saying that, yeah, we've become normalized to this and engaged with this? There are some pros and cons of how you're working that may actually come through this, but that's what we've got in terms of that moment. We're saying that as many people are equally engaged, which you could almost say that your engagement then is independent of your work circumstances. That could be it could be a, what's the term when you think of a theory? That's not what I want to do, but a theory that you have to prove. So interesting results there, guys. But it almost seems like we're in a similar position to where we were before. And then there's lots of suggestions. Keep your suggestions coming about this, because I think quite a number of us are surprised at the results. So let's see why those might be. What's our hypothesis? That's the word I was wondering for. Right, one thing as to why this is interesting, and actually maybe this does tie into this audience, because I know I have got a high HR audience here. Engagement is a predictor of job performance. All right, that's one of the things that the evidence is there. You can't always link it as much as Gallup would say they would like to do, in terms of it's not necessarily a prescriptive correlation. There's a correlationary relationship. It's not definitely two-way. In fact, you could argue that if you're performing, you will become engaged, and if you're engaged, you will perform. So it's not necessarily as simple as engaging people and they will perform and the business will perform. All right, so it's not necessarily that simple, but regardless, one of the things is saying to me, because I was thinking, oh, is it just one of those terms? Engagement is relevant. That is, it is still really relevant. As I'll explore later, I do feel that this term engagement is now potentially synonymous with well-being. David's commenting about work-life balance and autonomy. That is an interesting proposition. I wonder whether that is one of the reasons it's balancing out the fact of a pandemic, but having work-life balance and flexibility and autonomy, which are drivers of engagement, is that what's balancing out the sort of negatives for some people. So we do want to definitely be aware of it. So as you're putting your comments out there and thoughts here, I've got some thoughts also. We'll do one more poll in a moment. What I've got is a list of things which they the thinking is that it drives engagement, all right? In a moment, I'll get you to perhaps suggest it. In fact, you're already to a certain extent saying what drives engagement for you. So Mark, you said, wasn't there any research suggesting that high performance and or success can drive engagement? Yes. So if you went and looked at the CIPD thing, they said it goes both ways. So it's not simply engage your staff and you're guaranteed high performance, because it could be a two-way relationship. It isn't as simple as that. It's not necessarily causal. There's correlation. So it's complicated. People are complicated. So these are the themes that come through as things that drive engagement. And I say, in a moment, I'm going to give you the option to choose your top three. You don't have to choose many, just see which ones, again, this audience likes. And actually that might play into our earlier information, mightn't it? But line managers, people management actually has always consistently come out. If you want to influence engagement, the way in which the people managers in your organization interact makes a huge difference. So I thought this was one of the things that when I did the forum with people, I thought back to the Gallup Q12, and I don't know if any of you are aware of the Gallup Q12. They called it Q12. There were 12 questions. A lot of the themes that were in there actually still come out as being important. So one of them, for example, was my manager understands me as an individual. Now, one thing about a pandemic is it having line managers who absolutely really understand you, buy into you, take an interest in you personally. It's making a difference. That will make a difference to well-being and engagement. And I see those at the moment as feeling quite synonymous. The second one is clarity of role. So people having clarity and not just knowing what's expected of them. And that was the first Gallup question. So clarity of role and alignment with strategic purpose. And in fairness, in fairness to Gallup, these questions were very rigorously researched. There was lots of correlationary research behind them. So people knowing what's expected, so clear goals and objectives and potentially shorter term milestones, so that people have clarity when they're working remotely, is really important. But not just knowing what to do. What people need to do is understand how what they are working on links into the overall strategy. So these things have always driven engagement. But of course, if we swing it to the virtual world, we've got to have line managers who are helping people stay connected in a remote environment, maybe breaking down those objectives into shorter chunks. It's also about having quality, timely feedback. So people having a sense as to whether they're achieving, are they on track? Again, the manager taking the time to do that. So, and again, this links into high performance. If you look at all the research on high performance, goals and feedback has always been something that links to performance. So I guess this is where we could see that performance and engagement are likely to link together, potentially driven by goals, feedback, and interaction. Then we go on to things like trust, autonomy, and empowerment. So when I've been doing lots of training lately. So doing leadership training, the pet hate is micromanagement in an environment. And the funny thing is, people often end up getting micromanaged when they've had a very hands-off manager. It's almost this helicopter piece. They're not given any goals, they're left to get on with things. So they're almost acted like they're trusted. And then suddenly the manager comes in and micromanages, and that's disempowering. So that's almost the opposite of engagement. So people like to feel trusted, they need to feel that they're autonomous, and they need to feel empowered. But you want it within this environment of actually having clarity of what's expected. People want to learn and grow. That is something that comes through time and again, and you only got to look in organizations that don't pay very much, that actually people that feel they are aligned with purpose but also have opportunities to learn and grow, they're really highly engaged in what they do. Then there's things about feeling up to the job. So do I feel that I'm able to meet the demands of the role? So if I didn't feel able to, some of that might be to do with the support of my manager. Some of it's, am I in the right job? So if I'm in the wrong job, that is maybe going to, and you feel like it's not playing to my strengths, I am probably going to feel less engaged, and I'm probably not going to perform. And those two could be interchangeable. If I'm in the wrong job, I probably won't perform, and I probably won't feel engaged. So we do want the right people for that role to feel they're able to do it. Again, that's where you can think, if my well-being goes down, so I'm not able to perform in my role, it's really logical that therefore I'm going to feel disengaged. Then it's things about fit. There's quite a lot of work out there, which I was less familiar with, which is to do with people feeling that they fit in an organization. And this is more subtle. It's quite cultural. So let's say I'm somebody who's been in a very nurturing organization. I'm very values driven. It's all about people and supporting people. And then I move to a really demanding, fast moving environment where it's very about numbers, and people are almost a commodity. Then I may not be engaged there because there's a not fit with my values in terms of me feeling that I fit into that culture. And I think that link may well fit to why people leave quite quickly in organizations where you see people, they may realize they've made a wrong decision and they're not a cultural fit, and they might exit. Flexibility, well, this links into our work-life balance. That is something that I wasn't aware of 20 years ago as being an engagement driver, but there's lots and lots of people saying now that flexible working practices is a really high driver for many in terms of an engagement driver. So whether it's new, whether it was always there, but flexible working I think it has been there for a while, but this scenario where we have actually been forced into a different level of work-life balance, potentially in terms of commuting and things, that's something I wonder whether people are willing to give up. And maybe that is something that makes us grateful. I've also seen where prior to pandemic times where we've provided people with flexibility, they can be more engaged. I'm thinking of working mums that I used to have working for me when it wasn't really normal to give people part-time. I could see that they were highly engaged because they really appreciated having that flexible working conditions. Now I think people are possibly think that's an expectation rather than something that's just a nice to have. And then finally, there is a level of fit which is that that this is about our natural self efficacy. So some of us are naturally more engaged than others, and some of that comes down to our natural levels of confidence, and just some of us are just more naturally engaged. Maybe it's a particular topic or job that we're more interested in. So those are the things that drive, when you look at the figures out there that drive engagement. I would imagine that depending on the circumstances, some people are motivated by some more than others. So what I've done is I've replicated them in the poll, and I thought you could choose up to 3. Again, it's all anonymous, that you think maybe affect your engagement levels the most there. Yeah, it does, Mark, doesn't it? So Mark's saying flexible working covers many more options or approaches than 10 years ago. Absolutely. It's a complete paradigm shift, isn't it, with that? Oh, it's interesting, Brenda. So Brenda's saying that the engagement platform she's used has seen an increase on all engagement drivers. Ran research as to why. So when you say an increase, is that saying that everybody is more engaged, Brenda? Is that what you're saying? Or it's more about how engagement is different now? Do you know what you mean by an increase on all the drivers? If you can put some more comments and explain that a bit more, because I'm not quite sure if I understand it. So yeah, Krishna, if managers need to understand engagement, this is the sort of thing you need to share with them. Let them think about it, because actually the single greatest thing, managers can influence, I would say, well, the majority of those, or certainly at least 50% of those. So the relationship with the manager can really, really make a difference. How many got? Okay, I'll get up to 80% because you're almost there already at 78%. Let's see whether anyone else wants to choose theirs, then I'll end the voting and share with you. Let's see. And there's me, that was me speculating, but actually your results have reinforced it. So here we have, the survey says that 70% of people, of everyone who's voted, obviously one of your options you chose was having a supportive manager. It makes a difference to you. The next one, trust, autonomy, and empowerment. So, and I think the key about that is trust, autonomy, and empowerment. It's easy to say, but actually part of being empowered is you have to know you've got a supportive manager. You have to know what's expected of you. You have to feel that you've got the skills to do it in terms of that. And then opportunities, yes, and opportunities to learn and grow. That was our 3rd score. Interesting, isn't it? Development opportunities are key. Very interesting. Great stuff. What we will do is we'll screenshot these and we'll put them into the slides for you when we send them out to you, because I think often it's quite interesting to look back on this, and this has been some of the most interesting content. I think you've got the content, haven't you, Helen? You're capturing them as we're going through, I'm imagining.
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you. You're a star. Okay, dokes. Right. So how does this link into remote working? So feedback in the comments. Tell me, what do you think this is impacting in terms of remote working? We've looked at what drives engagement. You guys out there have pretty much said your engagement is about the same as it was pre-remote working. what we have to make sure is that we're not burning out, because the CIPD report said engagement is the antithesis of burnout. And this is why I think well-being, I can see why we are linking well-being. I think they're very interlinked. If we get to the point of burnout, our well-being goes down, we actually can't be engaged. It's a blocker. I don't know whether high well-being is a driver of engagement, but I think certainly low well-being would be a blocker to engagement. Oh, how interesting. Freedom of opinions. So they're seeing, Brenda, you're saying that people are seeing that they're getting more engagement. People are getting more engagement drivers. People are doing more engaging things. I'm going to have to go and find this research. If you have a link to this, Brenda, if there's a link that I can go and read, I'd love to go and understand this in more depth. So Kelly's saying, yeah, people are working long hours and not looking after their well-being because they can't switch off at home. So this is a case that'd be appreciated, Brenda. Thank you. Less quality contact with the manager. So you're saying definitely these are potential risk factors, aren't there, in terms of this? Yeah, so the whole piece with the line managers, the people who are doing well, they're doing really well. And I had someone quote the other day, the reality is that the good managers, they've adapted really well to a remote environment and, you know, demonstrating what's good, and the bad managers, they are exposed. And so I guess you could almost say there's a risk of us having a greater disparity in people's engagement and well-being, greater peaks and troughs, maybe. In terms of practical applications of a remote setting, for me, is I think we do need to be alert, really alert, to make sure managers are alert to people's mental health and levels of resilience. I feel like I'm stating the obvious here. In lockdown 3, you know, January, February, it is nice to say the sun's out, but some people are doing fine. Now we've got into a zone and they've got a routine and they're doing things, and some people are on their knees, and this is what we've really got to be aware of. And I think the whole renewal thing, I said at the start, I was supposed to be going on holiday tomorrow. Clearly that's not going to happen. So, and the renewal aspects, sorry, I was laughing to myself at the fact that I was saying to my children the other day, say, God, who would have thought this is as exciting as life gets now? We've gone for a walk and we went to the McDonald's drive-through, and then we went to get some pet food. So that's how exciting life gets yesterday for me and my son, you know. But arguably it's a simpler life. But you know, it's, we have different levels of expectation. Maybe in some ways that's a positive thing, and we were a little bit overstressed. But have we got the renewal activities in? If we're not going to have traditional holidays and things like that, are people looking after themselves to reduce the risk of burnout, almost a rebound when things do go back to normal, whether people then suddenly hit a slump, hit a wall? You do need to make sure that your managers, maybe this is a piece here, is do your managers have the skills? I've seen a real variety of skills, and I think we could get away with it in the workplace, where you were sitting next to somebody, not giving them clear goals, not setting clear objectives, not telling them, breaking down. People had poor management skills, were quite common and are still quite common, and I think you could get away with it more previously, because you could pick things up because you're seeing people day to day. Now people are either going to be isolated, or then you have this thing where I said this helicopter management, which really is, people find very, very difficult. The other thing, as some of you are saying, this detachment, so people feeling part of something, feeling like they fit in. And I can imagine that the people who perhaps are on their own, or are not living with family, may find that more isolating than others. So that can be tricky. And also, do people have the opportunity for learning and growth? Because you can't do training courses as easily. Well, we can do remote training courses as easily, but you know, the on-the-job learning where you just ask somebody sitting next to you how to do something, that kind of thing, maybe there's something there we can do more about to help people themselves with more opportunities to develop and grow. So those are 5 things that I thought of, which I feel are quite important to consider. I'd be really interested for you guys as to what other thoughts you think and suggestions, and in fact you are doing, that would be useful for others to share. Oh, brilliant. Brenda sent the benchmark report. Fantastic. Thanks, Brenda. It's always brilliant when people share. Thank you so much. So I'm just reading down the ideas that you've got, sort of things that we've done. So it's looking after people here. The problem is sometimes the work ends up taking a back seat, says Kim, because we have to do so much there. Yeah, So this is it. Yeah. So many of us felt we work in order to have a break, and we can't do that anymore, can we? So that's really tricky. So keep an eye out, guys. We'll be sending on, I can see a few people have got to drop off. So keep an eye out. We'll be sending out the slides to you. Any other suggestions about things that work for you or are working for your teams? Helen's going to just drop a Google feedback form into, it's got 4 questions really quick, into the chat, that we can gather feedback on what worked about this webinar and actually future topics to make it easy for you. I'm just going to let you know our next webinar is about taking ownership for your own well-being, so that's appropriate. And then we're going to talk about how to do virtual management. We'll put the link in next week. We've got a whole series coming out. We've just relaunched it. So it'll be all about how to do virtual management. Those sort of things are coming out is our topic for March. So look out for your email from Caitlin tomorrow. If anyone's got people who need training, we're running virtual management training, which is going down really well. We've also got learning opportunity. We've got our Actus Academy. So keep an eye out for that. We'll put a link on that as well, which is on-demand e-learning for people. So if there's anything like that, especially if you're in a smaller business, perhaps you haven't got a learning management platform, then you can look out for that. How do you sign up for training? What sort of training if you're after, Chelsea? Look, respond to the email from Caitlin and it'll show you the link, and then you can see what it is, or message us separately and we'll have a chat to you. Slack channels. Yeah, okay, so we use Ledger Edge. I'm not sure that's not your name. It's Picture of the Week competition, recommendation of podcast. So you've just got that thing where you're actually recommending people to share. I like that. We use Skype. Yeah, Julia, I think people go, oh, quiz, no thanks, moment. No meetings after 3 on a Friday. Nicola, that's a really interesting one, because I think I was asked to do recently a presentation on well-being at something like 4:30 on a Friday for people, and I'm not sure it was the right idea. It's just not the ideal time. Other links on this PowerPoint, just so you know, it's there, the CIPD link that we've got. We'll put the link in that that Brenda put in earlier, because that looked quite useful just in terms of that research that we're talking about from Peakon. And just a reminder, we've got the feedback survey in the link in terms of the Google form. So if you can click on that really easily, that would be much appreciated. Do people use Facebook at work, Alana? That's interesting, because I think some people would be a bit, or is that a work Facebook that you use? So I like wellbeing time after Friday, walk and talk. Yes, that's a good one, isn't it? So yeah, going out and actually walk, that forces you to go out and chat with people. Very good idea. We've started doing that a little bit. Encourage people to get outside. Totally, particularly when it's nice and crisp and warm and it's not just about mud. I'd love to know what Ledger Edge's name is. That's quite a good thing. So yeah, was that the walk and talk, the Slack channels? Yeah. Company app to update tool source. Thank you. Great for sharing the ideas. Really appreciate you doing those, guys. Liz. Liz, who would know? I don't know. I think I had an image of some Heath Ledger in my head, I think. So yeah, great. So thank you so much, guys, for logging it in. We will send you the links and the slides as ever. Hope they're useful. Please, if you can fill the survey out briefly, let us know the sort of webinar topics you'd like us to do for the future. Then we'd be really, really grateful. Thank you.